right, Will, when we look at the national landscape, anything that jumped out at you with the college football playoff rankings that were just released last night? I don't think there were any big surprises in the top 4 or 5, but as you go down the list, anywhere that you think the committee might be making a statement as we approach this weekend?
I don't know why. I really don't know what the committee is doing, to be honest. I don't have a problem with the rankings. They're fine. They'll work themselves out. Oklahoma, TCU this weekend, Miami, and Notre Dame, obviously, and then Georgia, Auburn. The rankings will work themselves out. I was a little surprised, and I do think you can get a little glimpse into it in the fact that Oklahoma picks up another top 10 road victory. They've now gone to Ohio State and won. They've gone to Oklahoma State and won. That's 2 top 10, about top 12 road wins there for the Sooners. But it appears that the committee thinks less of Clemson's loss to Syracuse than they do of Oklahoma's loss to Iowa State. And I find that strange. Iowa State is a ranked football team. And if you're comparing the resumes, I think Oklahoma's is better. I get the Sagarin ratings, and Clemson has 6 wins against top 40 teams. But look, let's be honest. That win against Louisville is not as impressive today as it was in September. Louisville's not a good football team. You've got Virginia Tech on the road and Auburn and Death Valley compared to on the road in Columbus and on the road at Oklahoma State, and the losses Iowa State versus Syracuse. I was a little surprised that the committee didn't make a statement and jump Oklahoma over Clemson. But to be honest, again, it's all going to work its way out.
And if you want to make a comparison, Clemson struggled against North Carolina State. Sure, a quality win against a good opponent, but considering that the game was close and still a 1-score game with 45 seconds left until Ryan Finley got picked off, versus comparing Clemson to what Notre Dame did the week before against the same opponent, they trucked NC State. They were clearly the better team. And if anything, Notre Dame got the fresher NC State version than what Clemson had to face the week after they took on Notre Dame. So you can make that comparison. We can make all sorts of comparisons, but most of it, I'm not going to agree with you that all of it's going to get sorted out, because if we've got a logjam of 1-loss teams and Wisconsin with no losses, then it's going to be a difficult decision. But I think most of it's going to be worked out. And by the way, according to USA Today, not that this means anything, they've got South Carolina slated to the Tax Slayer Bowl. So for you folks out there, that's basically the Gator Bowl against Iowa. And they've played some pretty good football.
That would be, I don't know if you want to play Iowa. Although Iowa away from Kinnick Stadium is not very good. They'll probably take it on the chin this coming weekend against Michigan State. They've been great at Kinnick Stadium. They're what are they, 30 seconds away from being undefeated. If Penn State doesn't throw that touchdown there at the very end, I think it's 30 seconds. So maybe it was the last play of the game. I don't really remember. But the bottom line is they've been great at Kinnick, not so good away from home.
Although the one game that might get lost in all this talk about Iowa State is that Iowa won at Iowa State in overtime when we thought Iowa State was awful, like the second week of the season.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, again, Iowa State was awful, so we hold that against them. Louisville was great, so that helps Clemson. Weird college football. The criteria, we talked about that on the radio show this morning, how the criteria you use, the people use. We get 12, 13 individuals in a room, and it's not a BCS computer model system, but you have people with actual opinions, and they differ from one another. Very interesting. I like to hear a little bit more in-depth into what they're thinking sometimes.
So, Will, are you in the category of we select the 4 best teams regardless, which, of course, that's kind of a ridiculous statement because nobody knows who the 4 best teams are. But in terms of your perception, would you select the 4 best teams regardless of resume? Or, for example, let's say you don't think Wisconsin's one of the 4 best teams. This seems to be the typical argument. Most people don't think Wisconsin's one of the 4 best teams, but if they earn it, meaning they win the Big Ten championship and they're undefeated, you would feel obligated to select, and you would select Wisconsin, for example.
If they're undefeated, you have to select them.
I totally agree.
You go undefeated and you're in a Power 5 conference, you have to. I mean, teams have slip-ups. I think people think it's so – we watch Alabama. People think it's so easy to go undefeated. It's not easy to go undefeated. And I can't fault Wisconsin for scheduling what they thought was going to be a good BYU team on the road in Provo. And what are you going to blame Wisconsin for BYU stinking? I mean, that's so the bottom line to me is if Wisconsin runs this thing out and they're 13-0 after the Big Ten championship game, they are a good football team. But if they're 13-0, they've got to be in. And I will say, I'm not one of those people where conference championships is the end-all, be-all of everything. But I think if you're 13-0 and you get that conference championship game, you got to be in. And so I think that that's maybe the one piece of criteria that trumps the better team, because I don't know if Wisconsin is necessarily better than Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, or Clemson. But if you're 13-0 and you win your conference championship, yeah, you need a chance to play for college football playoff. You've earned that right.
And we're also talking about Wisconsin right now and what their resume is right now. For us to be talking about them to make the final selection, they will have beaten Iowa, Michigan, and a Big Ten championship game against most likely Michigan State or Ohio State. So that's a different resume.
True. Very true.
All right, Will Gunter, the all-new early game, 107.5, the game there in Columbia, South Carolina, helping us break down South Carolina as the Gamecocks look to go to 7-3 with a win at home against Florida this Saturday, and, of course, the SEC and the nation. Will, we always love the discussion with you.
Always appreciate it. It's always a good time. Should be another great weekend. 3 top 10 battles, so it should be a great weekend of college football.